All right, so this afternoon we are joined by Mr. Keith Gray Sr., candidate for House District 45 representing Lancaster and York counties. Mr. Gray, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we want to start out by just learning a little bit more about you. So could you share with our members how your personal and professional backgrounds have shaped your views on the importance of education to South Carolina?
All right. Well, I'm a product of both parochial private school and public school. So I had a chance to see both and experience both and the pros and cons of both. I've had all my children have gone through public schools as well as my grandchildren and my great granddaughters. So I think one of the things that's been discouraging to me is how the public school systems have been allowed to slide. They have not been fully supported by the state governments, and we see it in students just not being as well prepared for for life, for jobs. The teachers are doing all they can. Most administrators that I've met, I've been impressed with their professionalism and what they're trying to do with the resources they have. But I see these overcrowded classrooms that you really shouldn't see that size of class in anything maybe than a college education. I mean a college,
Introductory
lecture.
seminar classes.
Exactly. So we have to prepare our students. It's one of the mantras of my campaign is preparation, prevention, protection. And the preparation of our students for either going on to college, though I'm a really big believer that our technical and trade schools should be way better, supported. Our students should be encouraged to go into those areas. We need them. We need plumbers. We need sheet metal mechanics. Speaking from personal experience.
Sure.
And money isn't everything, and you can waste money, but I don't think there's waste in the school systems. There might be from some of these mandates and the whole business of the testing. That yes, you need to have a rough idea how things are progressing, but if the teachers have small enough classes and have teachers' aides, they're going to know which students need a little bit of extra help. They're going to know, or where one or two need an occasional extra boost to stay up with the others, which also brings us into even the preparation of starting school. I strongly believe in the pre-K, kindergarten, and because of the economic demands, a lot of families cannot spend as much time with their children preparing them for the socialization that will come in elementary school. Just having the time to talk to play with them. So it's from top to bottom. It's from 2 or 3 years old through the elementary, the middle school, the high school, the tech school, a lot more support and all that. That prepares them to be productive, to take care of themselves, their families, can contribute to our communities. I could probably go on a bit more, but I think you get the idea.
And that's actually a good segue to where I wanted to go next, because you talked a lot about teachers, the importance of class size. And I think a lot of what you said there about the value of smaller classes will resonate with teachers. But unfortunately, in South Carolina, we're in a teacher shortage crisis at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, over 6,500 teachers left our classrooms. We started the year with over 500 vacancies, and that's to the detriment of our students. So if you could, obviously class size would be one component of it, but what, if anything else, would you do as a member of the General Assembly to try to help our state recruit and retain the very best teachers?
Well, you're not going to get quality if you're not paying for it. Bottom line, we've got to reward teachers for what the important contribution they're making to our communities, to our families, to our children's futures. Being at the bottom in the whole country is not a competitive situation. They have student loan debts, which that's a whole nother thing to address, but that's more of a national thing, but it can be addressed at the state level. That is something myself and the other representatives going down to Columbia can push for. That by raising the salaries, by going back to some of the mechanisms that I understand have been dropped, the merit pays for additional professional training for the seniority. Those experienced teachers that have those wonderful skills in the years of OJT, and then they will to take on mentoring the young ones. Well, that's like teaching the apprentices, which is something else I know a lot about.
Sure.
So we have to provide them with a living salary and the support in the budgets for school materials. This is insane that underpaid teachers are having had to pay for school supplies. What the heck? So,
sure.
And then and actually following it with that is the whole fact of so much tax money is being left on the table with, I think, oversized economic development incentives. What good is it going to do to bring those jobs in when our population is not prepared to take them?
That's a great point. There was a report that was just released yesterday by a think tank called Good Jobs that found that. Huh?
I have that cut and pasted.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, over $400 million. $400 million left on the table. So yeah, it's an excellent point. And it also leads nicely into the next question, because I want to talk about equity. And our state, under our state constitution, the General Assembly has an obligation to ensure a free and public education to all students. The state Supreme Court said it has to be, quote, minimally adequate. We don't think that's a high enough bar as an association, but we also acknowledge we're not there in all places. So as a member of the General Assembly, you talked some about pre-K and 4K education. That's obviously a huge equity component. But what other steps do you feel the General Assembly should take to ensure that every student in South Carolina is receiving the kind of education they deserve?
There needs to be a reformulation of how the money is spent. There are certain areas, rural areas, that have been so badly neglected. And I think for the most part, we know some of the reasons for that. But an inequitable tax system is going to exasperate those inequities of spending per student. I don't have the numbers handy, but some of the differences from county to county is inexcusable, especially when the shortchanged students and counties are the ones that need it the most. I believe there should be perhaps a statewide like bond issue for infrastructure and prioritizing where that's spent, like kind of a one shot to separate out the building and providing the physical plans from the actual day-to-day maintenance and administration.
Okay. Also talking about funding, the governor made a lot of news this summer when he announced that he was going to take $32 million in federal relief dollars to create the Safe Grants program for scholarships to private schools. And that's actually going to be an issue heard by the state Supreme Court on Friday. But the governor, in announcing the Safe Grants, indicated he wants to see the General Assembly create a permanent program of that sort. So as a member of the General Assembly, what would your position be if that request came from the governor?
Which part of no way? No. Private schools are private schools. The public funds that I pay with, and I don't have a child, grandchild, or great-grandchild in this state, but I gladly pay the taxes for the schools for the benefit of all children. And I just cannot support, and that particular attempt for him to divert 3/4 of the special funding, if you go to my website, I have at the tail end of a little couple-minute clip that I have on the state of our education, I have a rant on that because it had just happened the day before we did the filming.
Sure. Well,
So,
we'll be watching anxiously on Friday to see what the state Supreme Court does.
Yes.
Also in the news this week, the General Assembly's back in town in Columbia, and while the Senate passed their version of an education reform bill in the spring, didn't make it to the House, and the House has announced they're not going to address it during this kind of special session in September. So next year, education reform is going to be right back on the plate for the General Assembly. So as a member of the General Assembly, what do you consider to be one of or a few of the most important reform initiatives that our state should take in education?
Well, I already touched on the funding, the real fundamental issues on the funding. I think it had to.
You talked about trade schools some.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And there are some elements of reform that would touch on that. So if you want to speak a little bit more to why you think that would be important.
Certainly. I felt for 50 years that vocational training in the United States is the redheaded stepchild of education. There are so many people who are so good with their hands and probably would go nuts if they're stuck in a cubicle. And we need those skill sets. And here's the thing, you can't offshore a plumber. People need to think about that. You can't offshore the electrician working on your house or building a house for you or an office building. I have done some research, and I know there is a private-public partnership of apprenticeships, and this is excellent because that's the only really way to go with that. I was a director of an apprenticeship program for the Sheet Metal Workers Union in Florida, and the combination of school and on-the-job training and the mentorship that I mentioned earlier is the ideal way to get someone up to speed quickly, safely, and they don't owe any money when they're done.
It's true.
I went to 4 years of college, and when I came out in '72, there was a bit of a recession, and my BA really wasn't worth a whole lot, and I went into the sheet metal trades.
Yeah.
And supported a wife and a daughter.
Sure.
With insurance and no other debt. So it's a good option.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground, but I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to make sure our members are aware of what you think is most important for them to know about you. So is there anything we haven't covered that you'd want to make sure our members know?
I maybe along the side of when I mentioned teachers' aides, I believe that there really needs to be an increased staffing of counselors, of health, help. I am uncomfortable with law enforcement being in our schools instead of a counselor, a mental health specialist. Yes, there are definitely problems, and some schools have them worse, and perhaps there it would be appropriate for a presence, but we need to break the school to prison pipeline. Sheriff Lott in Richland County is doing a fantastic job on that. And I would like to see that pushed in a lot of districts, and at the state level, that would be something I could take on.
Sure. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk this afternoon and share with our members. We wish you all the best for the fall, and just thank you for your willingness to serve our state.
Thank you very much for having me, and I will be honored to serve our citizens and our teachers.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, sir.
Have a good day.